This, according to FoxNews.com, the school resource deputy who was on patrol at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, on February 14th, resigned Thursday after video surveillance showed he never entered the school. So he resigned today, even though he clearly knew there was a shooting taking place. Deputy Scott Peterson of the Broward County Sheriff's Office was stationed on the school's campus when Nicholas Cruz opened fire with an AR-15 rifle, leaving 17 people dead and others wounded. Sheriff Scott Israel, during a press conference today, said video showed Peterson arriving at the west side of the building where the shooting took place. Peterson, Israel said, took up a position but never went in. Peterson was armed and in uniform during the shooting, but never entered the building despite clearly knowing a shooting was happening. The sheriff said he believes Peterson remained outside of the building for roughly 4 minutes, while the shooting in total lasted around 6 minutes. The officer never fired his weapon. The sheriff told reporters, he's devastated, sick to my stomach. There are no words. When asked about what law enforcement agencies entered the building first and at what time, Israel said that it doesn't matter who went in first or what order you went in. What matters is that when we, in law enforcement, arrive at an active shooter, we go in and address the target, and that's what should have been done. He says that officer should have went in, addressed the killer, kill the killer. And you expect your government, your law enforcement to always be there to protect you? Doesn't happen. You are the first responder. That's why I think Trump's proposal, and it's not just Trump's proposal, it's been going around now, but Trump said it, of allowing some teachers who have licenses, who are trained to have concealed carry is fine. We'll talk more about that and much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on until 10 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Obviously, this school shooting is still the big topic, and we're going to talk a lot about that. You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 if you have any comments on this. And, of course, we have Mr. Tom Benson, who is producing tonight as well. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine. How do? The other amazing thing on the shooting incident was the fact that the CCTV video that the police thought they were watching was live was actually 30 minutes old.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how the perp was allowed to get out of the school.
Yep. That's exactly right. There's so many drop balls in this situation. This should have never happened. This should have never happened. Never seen anything like this.
And the other thing, one more thing.
Yeah.
It just seems to me that the sheriff down there, Scott Israel, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
He's a Democrat, and I think all he's doing is campaigning for re-election right now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't want to be one of these people who thinks he doesn't care. I'm sure he believes in what he says.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure he believes exactly what he says, and that's the solution. But he probably has a bias. I don't doubt that at all. I got to tell you, this was not an easy show for me to put together and do. This has been weighing on my heart a lot for the past few days, few hours. It was hard to sleep well last night. And the main reason that is because I'm sick. I'm a little scared, actually, but I'm sick of the mob mentality. It seems like we move from one crisis to another in this country, and instead of trying to deal with these crises like rational human beings, like rational adults with real discussion, we go from one mob action, one mob protest to another. And we've seen what it does. We've seen mobs destroy cities like Baltimore and Ferguson. We've seen mobs destroy schools like what Antifa has done. We've seen mobs go into parks and start tearing down statues and cheering. And I don't really want to talk about the students who were at that CNN thing last night, who went to that school, and the parents who lost kids. I don't want to talk about them. I want to grieve with them. But what happened on CNN last night was nothing but a witch hunt. Was nothing but mob mentality. It was not helpful. It will not bring us to real solutions. It will just divide us more. And I understand passions are high. Of course passions are high. But passions are high after any crisis. Passions are high after any crime. Passions are high after any murder. But you can't run a country, you can't run a government, you can't have policy debates where you just have mobs of people yelling other people down, calling them murderer. I half expected people to rush the stage last night and yell off with their heads and take them to the guillotine. I know it sounds extreme, but what they were yelling last night, and Dana Lash, by the way, she says if she didn't have private security, she might not have been able to leave last night. I half expected pitchforks and torches to be brought in last night. This is not helpful. This is wrong, and it's dangerous for the future of this country. This kind of stuff, this mob mentality, is what destroys countries. Gun rights doesn't destroy countries. Debates over taxes doesn't destroy countries, whether we get lower taxes. But this mob mentality, where all we do now is we get together in mobs and yell and scream and protest and destroy things and hate the other side, that can destroy countries. That can really bring us down a very bad path. Some examples of this last night where, here's cut one that I wanted to play. You know, these kids, everyone's saying these kids are articulate. They're the future. They're starting a movement. Maybe they are. But some of the stuff they said was, frankly, disrespectful. It was not helpful. It makes me wonder what we're teaching the next generation if they think this kind of stuff is okay. Here is one of the cuts.
Senator Rubio, it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and not look at Nicholas Cruz. But the point is, you're here, and there are some people who are not.
It's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 or Nicholas Cruz. Why would you say something like that? Rubio decides to show up, decides to have a conversation with you, sympathizes with you, wants to find solutions with you. He didn't have to go last night. And he goes and he talks to you, and you basically call him a murderer. He didn't murder your classmates. Nicholas Cruz is the murderer. He is the one responsible. I feel like nobody's blaming who is actually responsible, and that's Nicholas Cruz. He's the one who is ultimately responsible for what happened at that school. And we're making excuses for him while we're blaming everyone else. But to say something like that, how does that solve anything? All you're doing is making the other side angry, and they're going to fight back, and they're going to go out and they're going to buy more guns, and you have solved nothing. And then it happened with NRA spokesman, conservative talk show host, formerly on The Blaze, Dana Lash. She was trying to talk to them, and listen to some of the stuff they said to her.
Dana Loesch, I want you to know that we will support your two children in the way that we will not. You will not.
Stop right there. We will support your two children in the way you will not? Why would you say that? What are you trying to accomplish saying something like that? oh, she doesn't support her 2 children. In her mind, she believes having guns does support her children, because if her children are in trouble in the home, she will be able to defend and protect them. It continued on, though.
The shooter at our school obtained weapons that he used on us legally. Do you believe that it should be harder to obtain these semi-automatic and weapons and the modifications for these weapons to make them fully automatic, like bump stocks?
Well, first off, Emma, I want to applaud you for standing up and speaking out. And for anyone who has ever criticized you or any of these students up here, including people who have been on my side of this issue, I don't think that anyone should deny you your voice. Now, I want to answer your question, and I want to be allowed the opportunity, which is why I am here, to talk and have this discussion with you all and answer these questions. This is why I came down here. I don't believe that this insane monster should have ever been able to obtain a firearm. Ever. I do not think that he should have gotten his hands on any kind of weapon. That's number one. This individual was nuts. And I, nor the millions of people that I represent as a part of this organization that I'm here speaking for, none of us support people who are crazy, who are a danger to themselves, who are a danger to others, getting their hands on a firearm. Let me answer the question. You can shout me down when I'm finished, but let me answer Emma's question. It is not federal law for states to report convictions to the NICS system. It's not federally mandated. We had 3 lawmakers on this stage, and only one of them hinted at reinforcing the background check system. It is only as good as the record submitted to it. Only one of them even got anywhere close to mentioning that. We have to have more than 38 states submit records. That's number one. Number 2, we have to develop better protocol to follow up on red flags.
They were shouting her down. They wouldn't let her speak. They were yelling, "You murderer." She didn't murder them. She wanted to come up with the solution to strengthen background checks, to fix the system so people with mental illness are into the background check system and they're flagged and they cannot get a gun. And she wants to make these authorities, these local and state authorities who do not follow up with the background check system, she wants to find a way to hold them responsible so they will do that. That's a part of the law that has been promoted by the NRA for years now. And to say they don't want to do anything and just to yell and call her a murderer, what are you solving? This is mob mentality, and I understand passions are high. I get it. I can't imagine what some of those people in there are going through. But you cannot move forward as a country, as a people, with that kind of display. The right way to do it was what happened yesterday at Trump's listening session. Now, he's being criticized for having notes. For God's sake, they'll find anything. He wrote down some notes, and one of the notes said, "I hear you," and they act like he's the devil because he wrote down some notes. Everybody writes down notes. Sheriffs have written down notes when they're doing press conferences. The principal of the school, when he did that emotional video, was reading off of notes, for God's sake. It's one of the more normal things Trump has done. But that was the way to do it. They had a civil discussion with different ideas, and it was heartfelt. And you know what? It worked. That worked. Trump listened, and he wants to put some of those ideas into effect. That's how you get stuff done in America. Not get crowds of people and just yell at the other side and call them murderer. Oh. It's not good. It really bothers me where this is going, because this isn't the first time I've seen this in the past few years. I keep seeing this over and over with every issue, this mob mentality. It's not good.
Well, the other thing, too, is if they're shouting opposition, you know they're not listening. And if there's anybody around them who wants to listen, they can't hear.
Yeah, 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We're going to go through some of what Rubio had to say. Rubio, he was a voice of reason last night. Even in the lion's den, in the fire, he still came out as a voice of reason. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of a show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Well, it's hard to be a voice of reason today, I think, but I'm going to try. I appreciate you all joining the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We're on until 10 p.m. tonight. If you miss any of the show, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We're on Facebook Live as well, so you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. So I wanted to go through some of the audio last night of Rubio. He was good last night, despite what he had to go through. He stayed calm, and he was a voice of reason, and he was honest. And he was right about most of what he said. The people didn't want to hear it. They wanted to vilify him, along with the NRA, as enemies of the country. But, you know, a lot of people I know watched it and were impressed with Rubio last night. Even those who disagreed with him, I know, were impressed with Rubio. I think Joe Scarborough, oh no, he came out and actually complimented Trump, believe it or not, for the listening session. But others were impressed with Rubio.
Yeah, Joe Scarborough said, "Thank you, Mr. President."
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a good move by Trump. This was a good move by Rubio, I guess. Although I can understand why, like, Rick Scott didn't go. Why would you go? It was obviously a setup against you. But Rubio handled it well, and, you know, he was taking a line of questioning by one of the students who's been very vocal on that. And let's just play some. We're going to go through a lot of this and play Rubio's response here. Here it is.
And guys, look, this isn't about red and blue. We can't boo people because they're Democrats and boo people because they're Republicans.
Okay, stop right there. So this is Cameron Kasky. And I like his comment there. For once, I'm like, that's a good comment. Thank you. But then after this is when it turns ugly. So he says that, gets it out of the way, and then it turns ugly. Here it is.
Who's willing to show change, no matter where they're from. Anybody who's willing to start to make a difference is somebody we need on our side here. And this is about people who are for making a difference to save us and people who are against it and prefer money. So, Senator Rubio, can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future?
Stop right there. So you bring Rubio there, and you want to come up with solutions you both can agree on, and you basically just throw a setup question like that, a gotcha question like that, an irrelevant question like that. It's completely irrelevant. And Rubio actually talks about why it's irrelevant, and he's right. But it continues on here. Oh, and the mob goes wild, of course. Here's the mob.
I wish I could have spoken. I wish I could have asked the NRA lady a question. I wish the NRA lady I could have talked to, because I would ask her how she can look in the mirror, considering the fact that she has children, but, you know, maybe she avoids it.
Okay, stop right there. Why would you say that? Why? How can you look in the mirror and you have children? I'm sure she looks in the mirror just fine, because she actually wants to be able to protect her children. But see, I can understand why Rick Scott didn't go to this. It's not good. This solves nothing. You just look like you're out for an agenda, an agenda of hatred against people who disagree with you. It continues on.
I don't freaking know.
That's okay. The question is about NRA money.
So, number one, the positions I hold on these issues of the Second Amendment, I've held since the day I entered office in the city of West Miami as an elected official. Number two, no, the answer to the question is that people buy into my agenda. And I do support the Second Amendment. And I also support the right of you and everyone here to be able to go to school and be safe. And I do support any law that would keep guns out of the hands of a deranged killer. And that's why I support the things that I have stood for and fought for during my time there.
More NRA money?
That is the wrong way to look. First of all, the answer is people buy into my agenda.
You can say no.
Second, well...
Okay, stop right there. Rubio's right. The NRA has given him under $10,000 for the last 2 campaigns. It's nothing. It's pennies. $10,000 directly. The NRA is a powerful organization because they have millions of supporters in this country, and they organize them and they organize votes. It's nothing about the NRA paying off these people. That's not what's happening. The NRA, they like to get support from the NRA because their constituents, because Rubio's constituents support the NRA. That's why. And the NRA supports Rubio because they support Rubio's agenda, just like Rubio said. It's not about money. The NRA barely gives them any money. But they organize and they have a huge following. And a lot of Rubio's voters also like the NRA. So if we're going to be honest, let's be honest about this. Saying you're not going to accept NRA money, what does that? It has nothing to do with anything. It's just a got you feel good question. You had an opportunity to come up with real solutions here. This doesn't do that. He continues on.
Guys,
the influence of any group.
We're going to be here all night.
The influence of these groups comes not from money. The influence comes from the millions of people that agree with the agenda. So the millions of Americans that support the NRA and who support gun rights.
Okay, stop right there. So they're chanting. It's the mob mentality again. I feel bad saying that because I understand a lot of these people are upset and passionate. But you can't solve a political debate with this kind of action. But Rubio was right. Even in the fire, he was still right. They support the NRA's agenda because millions of people support the NRA. Millions of law-abiding, gun-carrying citizens, including parents, I guess, of some of the students, including the JROTC. You know, the NRA supported the JROTC at that school. Members, kids in the JROTC at that school. One was killed saving other students. Others, what they did is they got Kevlar vests and covered up some of the students and put them in a corner so they wouldn't be shot. Some of these JROTC kids were heroes, and that JROTC is supported by the NRA. So let's not pretend like the NRA is all evil. It continues on.
Sorry, Senator.
Guys, if you...
Cameron is having a conversation with Senator Rubio. Let's let them talk.
Listen, I respect... You can ask that question, and I can tell you that people buy into my agenda. I will answer any questions you guys have about any policy.
Right now, guys, be quiet. You know. And
I just think that ultimately that is not our goal here. Our goal here is to move forward.
Wait, so hold on. So right now, in the name of 17 people, you cannot ask the NRA to keep their money out of your campaign.
Okay,
I think in
stop.
the name of 17.
So all of this is predicated on the NRA is bad and evil. Rubio doesn't think the NRA is bad as evil. The NRA did not kill those students. So first off, there you go. But second, Rubio was right. That was supposed to be about coming up with solutions to stop the violence. And all he wanted to do was get Rubio in a got you question to make him look bad because he accepts money from the NRA, which is really pennies compared to how much his campaigns really get. This solves nothing. Nothing. It continues on.
17 people, I can pledge to you that I will support any law that will prevent a killer like this.
No, but I'm talking NRA money.
No, because...
matter of fact, I bet we can get people in here to give you exactly as much money as the NRA would have.
But it's not. I understand. And you're right.
Can you stand up and donate to that real quick? Okay, not a lot, but we'll get it. I'll do it.
You're right about that.
Quite a bit of money so far.
Well, you're right about that. There's money on both sides of every issue in America. And where that leaves us in policymaking is to look at the issues and make a decision based on what we think is right. But ultimately, look, the First Amendment is as important as the Second. And therefore, you have every right to ask that question of me, and I'm here to tell you that I will stand for the things. Are you going to be accepting money from the NRA in the future?
I've
always supported.
He already answered the question.
The help of anyone who agrees with my agenda.
He said yes.
But my agenda is, I'll give you a perfect example.
Your agenda is protecting us, right?
Well, I'll give you an example this very evening. I have told you that I support lifting the age from 18 to 21 of buying a rifle. My understanding, as before I walked out here, is that that organization is not in favor of that. But I think that's the right thing to do. I don't know what their position is on teachers being armed, but I don't think they should be, because that's what I think the right thing to do is. When I offered my bill to restrict people on the terrorist watch list or that have been on the list for the last 10 years from purchasing a weapon, they didn't take a stand. I don't think they certainly didn't support but I offered it. I will do what I think is right. And if people want to support my agenda, they're welcome to do so, but they buy into my ideas. I don't buy into theirs.
Okay, so I knew that was going to happen. NRA, please just keep the money out of Rubio, okay? If he wants to run again, you guys
Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate it. Stay with us. More survival.
So did he even listen?
No.
No. It's sad. And I guarantee you this kid had these opinions before this happened. And he's using this to promote it.
Good job moderating there, too, Jake Tapper.
Yeah, I mean, there was some times where Jake Tapper told the crowd, look, I understand you're passionate, but they have to be able to answer the questions. It just was not the right setting to do this. It was not the right time to do this. It just was not done right. Even if you disagree with me on my position on guns, and by the way, I'm not a big gun guy. I don't own guns, but I believe in the Second Amendment. But that being said, even if you disagree, we have to get to a place where we're not doing this stuff. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Let's take a call, shall we? Let's take a call. Let's go to Bob in Longwood. Bob, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, 2 days ago, I would have never bought that gun, But what I seen with the mob yesterday and everything like that, and actually throughout the years, I've seen a lot of mobs like in Baltimore burning buildings down and burning businesses down and everything like that. So I'm going to go out and buy one of them guns.
The AR-15?
That's right. Because the reason like that, it's the mobs, and you have to protect yourself, and your property and everything like that. That's why I think a lot of people got this gun, because
of course they do.
Groups of people. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate it. Speaking of the type of gun, there's a lot of debate over whether we should ban the AR-15. This came up last night as well, and Rubio, I give him credit, he was a voice of reason once again. He was questioned by Fred Gutenberg, who I just feel for this guy because his 14-year-old daughter was killed in the shooting. So, of course, he's angry. Of course he is. I would be angry. I'd be upset. But he questions Rubio on this, and Rubio gave him an honest answer, despite everything that's going on. And Rubio was respectful. Rubio was good last night. He showed a lot of class. Here it is. Here is that father questioning Rubio.
Now, I think what you're asking about is the assault weapons ban.
Yes, sir.
So let me be honest with you about that one. If I believed that law would have prevented this from happening, I would support it. But I want to explain to you why it would not.
Senator Rubio, my daughter, running down the hallway at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, was shot in the back.
Yes, sir.
With an assault weapon. The weapon of choice.
Yes, sir.
Okay? It is too easy to get. It is a weapon of war. The fact that you can't stand with everybody in this building and say that, I'm sorry.
Stop
sir,
right there.
I do believe.
I just can't. I don't even know what to say because he talked about his daughter getting shot. It's awful. But for one, it's not a weapon of war. Our soldiers don't use AR-15s. Are you kidding me? They get slaughtered out there if they use AR-15s. But there are many mass shootings that happen with other guns. The church shooting in Charleston was another gun. The Virginia Tech shooting was a handgun. To ban that one type of gun and say, well, that's going to stop this, especially when the cop doesn't do anything. No, you would have to ban all semi-automatic weapons, and that's just unrealistic. It's just not going to happen. You're talking about millions of semi-automatic weapons that are in circulation in this country right now. You're not going to confiscate them, and you're not going to ban them. And Rubio makes that point, but he continues on.
You're saying it's true.
And the crowd's cheering him. Rubio takes it, though.
I do believe what you're saying is true. I do believe what you're saying.
Everyone. The senator has a right to be heard. He's answering Mr. Guttenberg's question.
I do believe what you're saying is true. I believe that someone like this individual and anyone like him shouldn't have any gun. Not this gun, any gun. But I want to explain to you for a moment the problem with the law that they call the assault weapons ban. And if you'll give me and indulge me for a minute to explain to you the problem. First, you have to define what it is. If you look at the law and its definition, it basically bans 200 models of gun in this country, about 220 specific models of gun.
Good.
Okay? But it allows legal 2,000 other types of gun that are identical. Identical in the way that they function, in how fast they fire, in the type of caliber that they fire, in the way they perform. They are indistinguishable from the ones that become illegal. And the only thing that separates the two types, is if you put a plastic handle grip on one, it becomes banned. If it doesn't have a plastic handle grip, it does not become banned. So let me explain, if I may, just for a moment more.
Are you saying
what the problem has been with the law.
You will start with the 200 and work your way up?
Stop right there.
I would say.
So is this the goal now? Where does this end? Even the parent and everybody in there wants that and say, well, it's just a start. Because they want to ban all semi-automatic weapons. Every time a debate comes up like this, they say the right overreacts. We're not trying to take your guns. Sure sounds like you are. Continues on.
I would explain to you what has happened.
It's a place to start. We can do that.
Well, but let me explain to you what's happened. So in New York, they have passed that ban. And you know what they've done to get right around it? It took them 15 seconds to do it. They simply take the plastic tip off of it. They just take the plastic grip off the front or the back.
So we don't start.
Same gun, and it becomes legal. Performs the exact same way. So what my belief remains that rather than continue to try to chase every loophole that's created, it's why it failed in 94, it's why they're getting around it now in California, it's why how they get around it in New York, is we instead should make sure that dangerous criminals, people that are deranged, cannot buy any gun of any kind. That's what I believe a better answer will be.
Okay.
Your answer speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Guttenberg. I appreciate your time.
So he gave a very reasonable response there, I think, Rubio. And he was honest. Because they asked him, okay, well, this assault weapons ban, why don't you support it? And he says, honestly, I don't think it would have stopped it. Because that's an honest answer. And he says, let me explain it. And he does. Because it's just, when you talk about an AR-15, it's just the way the gun looks. So, and then in the Florida bill that the House Florida legislature didn't want to vote on, there was 200 guns, but there's tons of other rifles out there that basically do the same thing. And you're not going to ban them all. You're talking about hunting rifles. You're talking about semi-automatic handguns. You're not going to ban them all. It's not going to happen. We have a Second Amendment right in this country. So Rubio, as a voice of reason, says, but I know what we can do. We need to find a way to prevent these crazy people from being able to get any gun. And he had solutions for that. Now, this whole idea of raising the age to 21, I mean, the biggest argument, I knew it's already come up and I knew it would, is that you can't have people join the military at 18 and then say they can't have a gun until they're 21. Even though in Florida, we already banned handguns for people under 21. So, I mean, we might as well. But he has solutions. Strengthen the background check system, which the NRA even supports. Maybe we should require a license to have a rifle. Since you have to have a concealed carry permit to have a handgun, maybe you need a permit to have a rifle. There's a solution, and Rubio wants to do that. But this whole idea of raising the age to 21, a lot of these mass shooters were over 21, so I'm not sure exactly. It might stop a couple of them, I guess, which is good. I don't want any to happen. But it won't be the end, because in the next tragedy, they'll just call for more. They won't be happy until all guns, I believe all guns are banned. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Now, if you watch the CNN thing, or if you watched a lot of this coverage, you would think that all the students are united in this effort to get for gun control. And this is the big issue, gun control, and all the students and all the parents are united on this effort. And that's just not true either, of course. We're being misled on that, and I'll explain that more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. Almost done with the first hour. It went by really quickly. I appreciate you all joining me tonight. We have one more hour to go, but if you missed any of the show so far, you can catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. We've been talking about the CNN quote-unquote town hall last night. I don't really want to call it that because it was more of a witch hunt, it seemed like. We're talking about, Trump had his listening session yesterday. There's a lot of talk on gun control. We want to talk about securing schools. How do we stop mass shootings? Why is there such an increase in mass shootings? It's really interesting to me. I hear a lot of people tell me, well, these mass shootings don't happen in other countries. Well, that's not true. We actually had a mass shooting in Russia over the weekend, believe it or not. And they have strict gun control. We had a really bad mass shooting in Norway a few years ago. We've had mass shootings in Paris. And we had the Charlie Hebdo mass shooting. And they have strict gun control. So mass shootings happen. So then they'll usually tell me, well, the frequency, they happen more in the U.S. than other countries. Well, that's a very recent thing. They didn't used to happen this much in the U.S. And that's because of copycats. That's because there's an epidemic of people trying to copy one another. There's something has changed in the country, yes, but it's not the gun. Guns have been in this country and everywhere in this country since its founding. So the gun's not the change. Something else changed. Now, the other thing about all this is, the media has portrayed it, especially like CNN, that all the students are united on this. But it turns out that's probably not true. Of course it's not true. And I wanted to play some audio here from Brandon Minoff. He was on Laura Ingraham this week. He talked before on another show earlier this week. And when you listen to him, you can just tell because he knew the coach that was killed. He played with that coach. That coach was a mentor to him. And you can just tell this kid is mad. He's still grieving, of course. But you can just tell he's mad. He's not happy with what a lot of his fellow students are doing. You can just tell. He didn't say that. But you can just tell that he doesn't like where a lot of this is going. But he talks about how not all the students are on that side of the issue. But the media ignores the ones on the other side of the issue. This is what he said.
I definitely think it's a youth movement, but I feel like not all the youth is being listened to. I feel like the conservative side of it is being ignored. It's just pushing gun control. It's definitely the wrong time to be speaking about it. Still been a week. We're still mourning the loss of our loved ones, and they're just still talking about what kind of guns to outlaw, outlawing guns, the kind of laws to create. But 17 people just died at the hands of a human. Humans control guns. It doesn't seem like they're looking to hear from the other side. It's two sides to every story, but they only want to hear one. Yeah, but I feel like they're uninformed and they're just following along the popular opinion, but they clearly don't know what they're talking about.
And the reason he said that last thing is there was a student at one of the rallies that said automatic weapons should not be allowed in this country or something like that, and they're not. You know, they're effectively banned. They're not totally banned. You can get them, but it takes a lot of work to get them. But you can just tell he's like, and this is not a kid who wants attention. It's completely obvious to me. He's very upset. He's still grieving. He lost someone close to him. He doesn't want attention, but you can just tell he's not happy with how this is all being portrayed, because he's like, look, a lot of these kids don't know what they're talking about. There's only getting the attention on one side of the issue. I don't know. Did you sense that in his voice? He just sounds, and if you see the video too, he just looks like he's not happy with all.
Well, the first thing I thought of is the people he's talking about seem to be just bending to peer pressure. You're right. It's the crowd mentality.
Yeah.
You know, that just, you get caught up in it, and you probably regret getting caught up in it the next day, you know?
You know, it's really interesting how, and I'm not the first one to bring this up, but it's interesting how they keep talking about how they need to raise the age of getting the gun to 21. Yet we're told that the students are the voice of political change. So they're smart enough to have these policy debates. Some were even suggesting they should vote before 18. So they should vote now, be head in policy debates now, but they're not old enough to have a gun. It's kind of weird irony, hypocrisy to all that. All right, first hour is over. I'm going to start the next hour with an uplifting voice that I heard at CPAC today, and we'll play that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. One more hour to go. We'll be right back.
To a conscience knowing so well that nothing comes from
This, according to TheHill.com, President Trump on Thursday signaled a dramatic shift on guns a day after he held an emotional listening session in the Oval Office with the families of victims and survivors of a mass shooting at a Florida high school. In a torrent of morning tweets, the president for the first time expressed support for a range of policies that will put him at odds with the National Rifle Association. Trump said he wants a total ban on bump stocks. The president said he supports raising the purchase for long guns from 18 to 21, and that he will be strongly pushing for comprehensive background checks. He says Congress is in a mood to finally do something on this issue, I hope. That's what he tweeted out. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are on till 10 p.m. tonight here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. If you miss any of the show and catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available, you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, or you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. So, one thing about that, why I read that, is yesterday it was weird, the dichotomy of events yesterday. You had Trump's listening session that was very civil. Yes, people were passionate and emotional, but it was very civil. You had Trump listening to them, open to all sides, and what comes out of it? Some change. Trump says, I want change. It shows that kind of thing can work. But then you have what happened in Tallahassee, or you have what happened at that CNN town hall, and it's just this mob mentality, yell at each other, scream at each other, vilify the other side, call them murderers, and it solves nothing. It does the opposite. You're just going to get people on the other side angry, and what they're going to do, we had a call earlier, he's going to go out and buy more guns. That's what happens every time. Because millions of people in this country believe in their Second Amendment rights. And there are reasons why people do. They want to be able to protect themselves. They want to be able to protect their families. And they believe it's important for this country to have an armed citizenry because it's less power to the government.
But one of the arguments you hear is people don't need that type of a weapon. Well, it's the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs.
People don't need alcohol.
They don't
alcohol
need
kills more people every year. They don't need cars
that go 150 miles an hour.
Cars kill more people than guns every year. And yet we're now we want to legalize drugs and ban guns. Oh, at least the Mexican cartels, when they won't be able to smuggle drugs in here now, they won't have to. They'll just move on to guns. So that'll be good. But it's just... unless we put everyone in a bubble, a government-issued safety bubble that protects them from all harm, you can't do that. We are a free country.
Safe zones. That's what you need.
I guess. But the fact is, the Second Amendment's important to millions of people in this country. You're not going to take away their guns. And if you try, you're going to start a civil war in this country. You just are. So you're not going to confiscate them. So what they want to do is end the manufacture. You're going to have a fight on your hands if you do that. It's just not going to solve the problem. But despite all that, I wanted to start this hour actually with something a little different. I just happened to catch this today. Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, who I really like a lot. He took some heat from Joy Behar and The View for his Christian beliefs. Mm-hmm. He takes some heat for people because of his Christian beliefs. Mike Pence, man, he'll stand up to him. He doesn't care. He is not going to cave in his faith because you want to criticize him, which I like. But he spoke at CPAC today, conservative, political action conference. Mm-hmm. And I thought he had some really good words, and it's not the divisive rhetoric kind of stuff. It's something that I think more of our leaders need to talk like, and more people in this country need to talk like. Because the thing with that CNN town hall, we went over it in the first hour, so you catch the podcast if you missed it, is there's too many people in this country who treat the other side like they're the devil. We all agree on both sides that we don't want our kids to be murdered in schools. Everyone agrees on that. Yet you wouldn't think so when you watched the town hall. They made it seem like that if you were a supporter of the NRA and the Second Amendment and you have other solutions to this problem, you're a murderer. That's not good for the future of this country. But Mike Pence had some uniting words, and obviously it probably won't work in today's world, mostly because of Twitter. By the way, Twitter. What some people were saying about Billy Graham on Twitter yesterday when he died is just disgusting.
I know.
Just disgusting. One of the nicest people in the history of this country.
Washington Post did a hit job on him today, too.
Washington Post?
Yeah. Their story basically was the fact that he was so devoted to his preaching that he ignored his family. Oh, God.
Yeah. Have you seen his family? They love him.
I know.
Jeez. All right.
I heard some people say that he's the greatest evangelist since St. Peter.
I mean, I don't know about that.
Well,
Martin Luther has to be up there, but
he brought a lot of people to the Lord.
He's definitely the greatest one since George Whitefield. But, yeah. Anyway, I wanted to play. You kind of threw me off guard with that, Tom Benson. Jeez. I wanted to play some words from Mike Pence there, just to kind of start this out. I really like what he had to say at CPAC, so here it is.
I've seen the courage and conviction that defines the men and women of the conservative movement all my life. And I see it in your faces this morning. I mean, my friends, the truth is we live in a time of widening challenges and unknowable threats. A time of too much division and too much anger in America. You know, it seems like we're becoming more and more disconnected from each other. Too often unable or unwilling to meet our fellow citizens where they are, to do what the president did yesterday, just to listen to one another in a spirit of humility and respect. And increasingly, it seems like we've lost sight. We've lost sight of who we are as a people, that the truth is, here in the United States of America, it's true today and it's always been true, that there will always be more that unites us than will ever divide the good and great people of this country. So let's try to reconnect in the days and the debates that come ahead. Reconnect with one another, reconnect with our communities. And lastly, I also believe that we should also seek in these challenging times to reconnect to something deeper. Something that speaks to the very heart of who we are. Someone who I believe has always been the source of our strength, and more than that, our hope. You know, yesterday mourned the passing of one of the greatest Americans of the past century, the Reverend Billy Graham. We remembered his ministry, a ministry for the gospel that changed the lives of millions. And we remember his matchless voice that inspired our nation during some of our darkest times. I remembered one such time just yesterday. His words at the National Cathedral 17 years ago. Words spoken just 3 days after the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. I was there as a first-term member of Congress, and I'll never forget what he said. On that day, Billy Graham said to the American people, "The spirit of this nation will not be defeated." But he admonished Americans to, in his words, come together to confess our need for God. He said, "We've always needed God from the beginning of this nation, but today we need him especially." And he reminded us that the Bible says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. And so with that admonition in my heart, I close today with faith. Faith in the boundless capacity of the American people. Faith in the president and the leaders they've elected to represent them at every level. And with that other kind of faith. What Billy Graham called hope for the present and hope for the future. But in the days ahead, as we work to advance our cause, restore our country, let us also remember to claim that hope. Remembering those ancient words that if his people, who are called by his name, will humble themselves and pray, he'll hear from heaven and he'll heal this land, this one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thought he was right on the money. And the idea of, he said if we humbled ourselves and pray, if we just humbled ourselves, humility is so lacking in this country today. More than anything, I think humility is just not, I don't see it anywhere from anyone. And the way a lot of the kids acted at that town hall thing yesterday, I know they're upset, but I didn't see humility there either. I want to know what we're teaching the next generation. 407-916-5400, text to 23680 if you have any comments on that. Trump yesterday had some controversy. He's not the first one to come up with this idea, but of course he's the president. He has the biggest bully pulpit, and he comes up with something and he's going to get criticized for it. He talked about arming teachers. Well, what does that mean? Is that so crazy an idea? Some people think it is. I want to go through what Trump said on that, which is actually pretty reasonable. Trump says a lot of things that are not reasonable, but this was very reasonable. But of course, he was blasted for it anyway, and we'll talk about that next and much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
So I got a text that came in, and you can text to 23680. First, he addressed me as Yap. It's not Yap or Yappy. It's Yaffee. Kind of like Laffy or Taffy. Yaffee. He said, when school expelled Cruz several months ago for having bullets in his backpack, why didn't school notify authorities of such? Sounds to me school authorities could have prevented this incident had they followed up with the investigation. Don't blame NRA and the weapon. There's just no doubt that there were so many balls dropped in this thing. This kid should never have been able to get a gun. He probably should have been institutionalized or something. There was just so many. There were so many signs. I've never seen anything like it where there was just this many. You know, the Las Vegas thing, it was the opposite. We still don't even know what the heck happened with that.
That's right.
Which is another thing that kind of concerns me. But with this, there were so many warning signs. The FBI had tips. The authorities knew about him. He was expelled from the school. The kids knew that he was capable of doing this. And yet nothing happened. And we're blaming the gun. So there you go. Now, President Trump, yesterday at his listening session when he talked with students and parents from Parkland and other mass shootings, brought up something that's pretty controversial. We talked to Sheriff Grady Judd on the morning show here on WFLA earlier this week, and he had an idea like this. And so, well, let's just play what Trump had to say about it. I want to play all of it. It's a couple minutes here, but I want to play all of what he said and then talk about it. Here it is.
Your concept and your idea about it's called concealed carry, and it only works where you have people very adept at using firearms, of which you have many. And it would be teachers and coaches. If the coach had a firearm in his locker when he ran at this guy, that coach was very brave. Saved a lot of lives, I suspect. But if he had a firearm, he wouldn't have had to run. He would have shot, and that would have been the end of it. And this would only be, obviously, for people that are very adept at handling a gun. And it's called concealed carry, where a teacher would have a concealed gun on them. They'd go for special training, and they would be there, and you would no longer have a gun-free zone. Gun-free zone to a maniac, because they're all cowards. A gun-free zone is let's go in and let's attack, because bullets aren't coming back at us. And if you do this, and a lot of people are talking about it, and it's certainly a point that we'll discuss, but concealed carry for teachers and for people of talent, of that type of talent. So let's say you had 20% of your teaching force, because that's pretty much the number. And you said it, an attack has lasted, on average, about 3 minutes. It takes 5 to 8 minutes for responders, for the police to come in. So the attack is over. If you had a teacher who was adept at firearms, they could very well end the attack very quickly. And the good thing about a suggestion like that, and we're going to be looking at it very strongly, and I think a lot of people are going to be opposed to it. I think a lot of people are going to like it. But the good thing is that you'll have a lot of people with that. You know, you can't have 100 security guards in Stoneman Douglas. That's a big school. It's a massive school with a lot of acreage to cover, a lot of floor area. And so that would be certainly a situation that is being discussed a lot by a lot of people. You'd have a lot of people that'd be armed, that'd be ready. They're professionals. They may be Marines that left the Marines, left the Army, left the Air Force, and they're very adept at doing that. You'd have a lot of them, and they'd be spread evenly throughout the school. So the other thing, I really believe that if these cowards knew that the school was, well guarded from the standpoint of having pretty much professionals with great training, I think they wouldn't go into the school to start off with. I think it could very well solve your problem. So we'll be doing the background checks. We'll be doing a lot of different things, but we'll certainly be looking at ideas like that.
It's amazing when I'm glad we do this on the show and have the time to do this on the show. It's amazing when you actually listen to a whole comment from someone and listen to it in context. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of the media outlets there are just playing little bits of sound bites of what he said there. But you listen to everything he said there, sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Does it not?
Sure. Can't argue.
I mean, all he's saying is that people who are licensed, who are trained, who volunteer and want to do it, let them have the opportunity to be able to defend themselves if they can. Now, there were people like Jeffrey Toobin on CNN who disagreed and, of course, totally took Trump out of context. I have the audio here, Tom Benson. Go ahead and play what he said on CNN shortly after when Trump said that. Here it is.
Personally, I'm pro-rancor. I'm pro-vitriol. I am pro someone doing something about this rather than being polite when you hear the President of the United States say the answer is to give every teacher in America a gun. That is insane. That is an insane idea.
So,
you didn't say that.
I know. I was like, so Trump says, I want to give some teachers guns.
Who want to?
He doesn't want to give them. He wants them the opportunity to be able to carry the guns they have. And you have people on CNN say, oh, he wants to give every teacher their guns. No, that's not. And I'm pro-vitriol. I'm pro-anger. I'm pro-rancor. How does this solve anything in this country? You wonder why people distrust media outlets like CNN? There you go. It's crazy. And Trump fired back in a tweet this morning. He said, I never said give teachers guns, like what was stated on fake news, CNN, and NBC. What I said was to look at the possibility of giving concealed guns to gun-adept teachers with military or special training experience, only the best. 20% of teachers, a lot, would now be able to immediately fire back if a savage sicko came to a school with bad intentions. Highly trained teachers would also serve as a deterrent to the cowards that do this. Far more assets at much less cost than guards. A gun-free school is a magnet for bad people. Attacks would end. He's right on that.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, some schools already do this and put up signs, and they don't have all these issues that everyone's afraid of, that teachers are going to start shooting students. You already trust the teachers to take care of your kids, even if they don't have guns. And now you think, oh, with the presence of a gun, they're still going to start killing the kids? It's ridiculous. As he said, history shows that a school shooting lasts, on average, 3 minutes. It takes police and first responders approximately 5 to 8 minutes, except they were there earlier and didn't go in, to the set of the crime. Highly trained, gun-adept teachers, coaches would solve the problem instantly before police arrive. Great deterrent. If a potential sicko shooter knows, this is Trump tweeting, by the way, if a potential sicko shooter knows that a school has a large number of very weapons, talented teachers, and others who will be instantly shooting, the sicko will never attack the school. Cowards won't go there. Problem solved. Must be offensive. Defense alone won't work. He also tweeted, I will be strongly pushing comprehensive background checks with an emphasis on mental health, raise age to 21, and end sale of bump stocks. Congress is in a mood to finally do something on this issue, I hope. So he's even willing to compromise with them. But he says something like that, and then you get someone like Jeffrey Toobin and just call him insane and do what they do. Now, I wanted to give you something that I found very interesting here. Stat, when he talked about gun-free zones, Trump was talking about that. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center, gun-free zones, area where guns are prohibited, have been the target of more than 98% of all mass shootings. This staggering number is why such designated areas are often referred to as soft targets, meaning unprotected and vulnerable.
Come on in.
Now, even the sheriff in Broward County is having his officers armed with rifles there because he says they are soft targets. Even he is admitting to that. According to the Crime Prevention Research Center, only a little more than 1% of mass public shootings since 1950 have occurred in places that were not considered to be gun-free zone. Former Vice President Joe Biden, a Democrat, introduced the Gun-Free School Zones Act in 1990, and it was signed into law by President George H.W. Bush, a Republican. The act was clearly proposed with the intent to prevent mass shootings at such precious areas as schools, but the act, as statistic proves, did not result in the desired outcome. Exactly right. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So I do have other stuff I want to talk about outside of this issue, but I wanted to say one more thing before, on gun control and gun violence and mass shootings and all that before we get to the other issues. By the way, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. You can follow me on Twitter at BeyondReasonR. We're doing the show till 10 p.m. Miss any of the show, catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. Best way to catch all this stuff. So, after the mass shooting under Obama's watch, you had Charleston, the one in Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Obama and Harry Reid both said at one point that this kind of mass violence doesn't happen in other advanced countries. Harry Reid said the United States is the only advanced country where this kind of mass violence occurs.
We're bad people.
Now, believe it or not, PolitiFact checked into that and said mostly false, that that's not true. They said that the frequency in the past few years has been more in the U.S., but that mass violence has occurred in other countries in the past couple decades, and I went over it earlier. All you have to do is look at Charlie Hebdo, the concert attacks in Paris, the one on the train. There's a Clint Eastwood movie about that right now that was stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So Norway had one in Russia over the weekend. It wasn't too long ago that terrorists attacked a school in Russia. So that's just not, it's just not true. But let's look at another thing that they miss. This is according to, once again, the Crime Prevention Research Center, headed by economist John Lott. From 2009 to 2015, shows the U.S. does not lead the world in mass shootings. In fact, it doesn't even make the top 10 when measures by death rate per million population from public mass shootings. Norway is the top with 1.8 per million. Now, this happened because that one killer killed 77 people in a mass shooting in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is Serbia. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is France. Just went over some of the mass shootings in France. Number 4 is Macedonia and Albania. Then Slovakia, Finland, Belgium, and the Czech Republic. Then comes the U.S. at number 11 with a death rate of 0.089. That's not all. There were also 27% more casualties from 2009 to 2015 per mass shooting incident in the European Union than in the U.S. There were 16 cases where at least 15 people were killed. Out of those cases, 4 were in the United States, 2 in Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. But the U.S. has a population 4 times greater than Germany's and 5 times greater than the U.K. So on a per capita basis, the U.S. ranks low in comparison. Actually, those two countries would have had a frequency of attacks 1.96, Germany 2.46, and the UK times higher. Yes, the U.S. rate is still high, nothing to be proud of, but it's not the highest in the developed world, not by a long shot. Yet people, of course, are wanting to ban different kinds of rifles and everything. So there you go, a little bit of perspective on that. People always bring up these stats, that there's less gun violence in Britain and Australia, and they say it's because of gun laws. Actually, gun violence was low in those countries before the gun laws were put into effect. So it's hard to say how much those gun laws made a difference. But I wanted to shift gears here now. Some other topics I wanted to get to before the show ends. Believe it or not, there's other things going on in the world. One of the big topics last week for us, Tom Benson, I know you'll remember this, before this mass shooting happened, last Tuesday we talked about this. The whole food stamp thing, remember?
Oh, yes.
All of the reaction I got to that, which was pretty crazy. A lot of people were upset at me about that. What it was is President Trump the Trump administration had proposed an idea, or kind of floated it out there, I think, to have delivery. Basically, you would deliver food to people in need of the food. It would be nutritional food.
Instead of giving them food stamps.
Or in addition to food, food stamps, but it would mostly be instead, and it could prevent fraud. And I said, do you really want to create some kind of new giant government program that will be in charge of something this big? And you think it's a good idea? And
it was likened to the Blue Apron delivery service where they deliver food.
That's what they said.
The average one-person meal on that is $9.99, $10. The average price of the federal government delivering food, $1.50. So the quality is not going to be the same. Nowhere near the same.
The quality wouldn't be the same.
A lot of mac and cheese.
I mean, the federal government couldn't even get a healthcare website right to begin with. That was pretty much a disaster.
Good point.
I mean, to want to create... It amazed me how many conservatives wanted to do that. How many conservatives thought it was a good idea to create some new giant government program that would be centralized and controlled completely by the government. Now we have the food stamp program, but it's mostly private sector. We do the funding, and you have debit cards, but that's it. You get the food and everything. All that is done by the private sector.
You think
they want to take all that and put it in control of the government? It's not a good idea.
You think it's an opportunity for a lot of corruption now? Just wait.
Oh, that's a good point. But I bring this up because I found this from the Washington Examiner today. And I think this is a better solution. This is a much better solution, and I kind of brought this up before. It says the USDA looks to tighten food stamp work requirements. This is much better.
The Maine, what they do in Maine.
Yeah, well, Maine does it. Some other states does it. It's been talked about and everything. The Department of Agriculture took the first step towards tightening work requirements for food stamps today, inviting public comment on how the program could encourage self-sufficiency for able-bodied adults. President Trump and Republicans all around the country have focused on more restrictive food stamp work requirements as a key part of broader welfare reform effort. Although the current Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, already includes work requirements, conservatives blame former President Obama for loosening the rules during the recession, resulting in more people receiving benefits even after the economy has improved. Long-term dependency has never been a part of the American dream. That's what Secretary Sonny Perdue said. It says USDA's goal is to move individuals and families from SNAP back to the workforce as the best long-term solution to poverty. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
That seems like the better way to go. And when people say, you don't have to do this to get rid of poverty, the welfare doesn't mean poverty and all that stuff. You don't need work requirements. I think it creates a cycle of poverty. And this is why I believe that. Because I've experienced it. Now, not food stamps. I have known people who have been on food stamps. But I've talked about this before. I once rented an income-restricted apartment. Where if you're under a certain... Because believe it or not, I don't make much money.
What?
In radio. You think radio is a lavish job? No. But it was an income-restricted apartment, so the rent would be a certain price. If you made under a certain amount of money, the rent would be a certain price. Well, it really wasn't enough. I wanted to make more money. So I went and got a second job so I could make more money.
Aha.
But because I decided to go get a second job and make more money, I went over the limit for the income restriction.
There you go.
So when they do that, at this certain apartment, what they would do is they would raise my rent $200 and something a month immediately, after the first year's lease.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, at first there's a part of me that thinks, why would I bother getting a second job? I would just rather not get a second job, make less money, and stay in this place for cheaper. And then it hit me. And this is real world experience I'm talking about. This actually happened to me. It hit me. This is exactly what happens. It is a cycle. It creates a cycle of dependency.
That's right.
When you have this mindset like that, you get caught up in the benefits, and you don't have work requirements and stuff like that. You get caught up in these benefits, and you get a mindset of dependency on these benefits that it discourages you to go out and better yourself. There was a little part of me that it almost did that to me. And I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It is not right. It just encourages a cycle of poverty. I feel trapped in this. So I left the place after a year. And I said, I'm never doing income restricted apartment again. And that's why. And to me, I think that's a great example of how this happens. You get these people that they get this mindset of dependency.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not insulting to them because it almost happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it just happens because there has to be a way, and Milton Friedman had some reforms. We talked about it in the past. He had some reforms that would prevent this kind of culture of dependency. But there has to be a way so people don't depend on it. It was supposed to be a hand up. So you would do it. You would get the help you need when you need it. But you're also encouraged to better yourself, to better your life, to better your income, so you won't need it forever in the future. But you have too many people that they feel entitled to, and they want it for the rest of their lives. And that should not be the goal of programs like this. I understand that food stamps are not, the biggest fraud in government. They're not the biggest waste in government. You want to talk about government spending, there's a great article in the Wall Street Journal that talks about what the true problem is, which I might get to in a little bit. But I thought this is a much better solution if you want to have a solution to better the food stamp situation, because way too many people are on it since the recession, and it encourages the cycle of poverty. Having work requirements and other things that encourage people to do better is a much, much better solution, in my opinion, much more conservative solution than to create some giant government-controlled centralized program that delivers food to people. You think that's going to go well? I don't think so. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
So, during the break, Tom Benson, you and I were talking about the Olympics.
Yes.
And you were telling me, you're basically venting me that you have not been interested in it at all.
I have not seen 1 second of it. Now, my wife has watched some of it, but I haven't watched any of it.
Do you know what she likes to watch?
Skating, of course, figure skating.
I heard the Americans, I just saw some video online where they, choked or something. They, took a dive or something. Why are you not interested? I mean, I'm really not either, but a lot of it for me is time. I don't know how people have time for these things.
I really don't know. I have not been interested in the Olympics in years, the last 3 or 4 of them. I just can't get into it. Now, one thing is when you were up north, when I lived up north, I watched them all the time because you're stuck inside. There's nothing else to do, in a February evening in Pennsylvania. So, you watch Roots and you watch, years ago it was Roots and then it was the Olympics, but down here there's other things to do.
So what did you watch? What sports did you like?
I like the skiing.
Okay.
I also like the cross country skiing too, where they They do the shooting. They have to go to certain places and shoot a rifle.
See, I've never really gotten to the Winter Olympics. Maybe it's because I'm a Floridian and I never participated in any of these sports because you can't afford it. So maybe that's why.
And I'm not a hockey fan, but I will watch hockey Olympics.
I'm much more into the Summer Olympics. But I think the U.S. usually does better in the summer ones. They're not doing that great in these Winter Olympics right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the ratings are not very good. It seems like for these Olympics.
Not as good as 4 years ago. That's for sure.
Oh, really? So you're even comparing it to past Winter Olympics, it's not as good.
It's down.
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe we're just too distracted as a society.
To be fair, though, they're down because a lot of more people are watching streaming as opposed to traditional broadcast TV.
That's what I would do. I mean, I guess I could watch broadcast TV. I don't have cable. I'm like most of my generation in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But so speaking of sports, you really don't like the NBA, right? You're not a fan of basketball.
Basketball is my least liked sports.
Now, why is that? I think you've told me this before, but I don't remember why.
Because I'm not good at it.
See, and that's funny because you really like baseball.
Yep.
I don't like baseball for that very reason. I'm terrible at baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it when I was a kid. I actually played it in Little League, but I was so bad I couldn't hit the ball with anything. And they put me in right field, so I didn't do anything. I was just so bad at it.
I had buddies who would practice hours and hours and hours shooting the basketball, and I just couldn't get interested in doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, basketball is the one sport I'm actually okay at. I've never been a really great athlete. When I was younger, I was pigeon-toed. You know what that means? That means my feet, kind of went inside, pointing towards each other.
Yeah.
Because the way I was born, born the wrong way because I had a twin. There's a whole story there, but I grew up pigeon-toed. It took years for me to kind of grow out of that and teach myself not to walk like that. But because of that, I never had any type of athletic ability. I've never been an athlete. My older brother was the athlete. So he was always good at sports too, but I was okay at basketball. The reason I bring this up, though, is there's this story that really fascinates me. Mark Cuban, you know Mark Cuban, he's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Did you hear what he did?
Yes.
What he said?
I did.
Oh, man. I can't believe he would say this in public and think he could get away with it. He came out, and he's been fined for it now by the NBA.
$600,000.
Yep. He said his team should tank the rest of the season on purpose. They should lose the rest of the season on purpose.
Because they want the number one draft.
Because they want that draft pick. So basically, I mean, think of that. Basically, you're telling your players who get paid millions of dollars, thousands of dollars per game to go out and lose, even though fans are still going to watch and be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could get paid thousands of dollars to lose a game. But this is what he said. He said, I'm probably not supposed to say this, but I just had dinner with a bunch of our guys the other night, and here we are, we weren't competing for the playoffs. I was like, look, losing is our best option. He says, Adam Silver would hate hearing that, but I at least sat down and I explained it to them, and I explained what our plans were going to be this summer, that we're not going to tank again. This was like a year and a half tanking, and that was too brutal for me. But being transparent, I think that's the key to being kind of a player's owner and having stability. He was fined $600,000. You can't come out and admit that you're tanking a season. But this is, when I asked Bud, the host of the morning show on the station,
sure, he
says that's the biggest reason he doesn't like the NBA. Because he feels like the NBA, too many games, the players will come out and they won't try. Certain games, the big games, they'll try, and other games, they'll just go out and they'll kind of tank and kind of phone it in.
Yeah.
And he thinks that's outrageous, especially for the amount of money they make. That if for that kind of money, you should try your hardest every single game.
Especially for the people buying the tickets. They want to see a good performance.
Because that's why they're there.
Couldn't you just imagine going to a big Broadway play and spend $200 in tickets, and then they just kind of waltz through the performance? You'd be upset.
That's a good example of that. Here's the thing though. When it comes to the NBA, this has been my thing for a while. I think there are just too many games. I think that is the biggest problem with the National Basketball Association, that there are just way too many games in a season. In fact, they had that one season where it was shorter because there was a lockout at the beginning of the season. They had to shorten it. And a lot of the players were happier that season because what happens is they play all these games. I think it's like 84 games now. And by the time they get to the playoffs and the end of the playoffs, they're exhausted.
And it's in June, the final game.
Yeah, so by the time they get to the end of the playoffs, they have used all their energy for the year, and it's exhausting. And a lot of these players are saying there really needs to be less games so that we can actually perform at the highest level every game.
I used to think it would be so much fun to go out and play baseball every day, but now that I'm older, I can see the grueling life these guys have. I mean, they're in practice now in minor league spring training, right? Spring training, and the winning team goes to the end of October every day, almost every day, with only a day off here and a day off there. That's a grueling existence.
I've always thought baseball's even worse than basketball. I've always thought baseball had way too many games. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Maybe. I don't know how they do so many.
I could take all the games I can. The other thing is they talk about baseball being slow. Doesn't bother me at all. I guess I'm a traditionalist.
Someone told me you don't watch a baseball game, you take in a baseball game.
Yeah.
That's what it is. All right, a little bit of an escape from all the serious stuff at the last segment of the show. I just thought that was really interesting since I am a basketball fan and a Magic fan, and I heard that. I was like, oh, my gosh. All right, if you miss any of the show, catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available, like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. And, well, we'll be back next week. I'll catch you guys next time.
I look inside.